Welcome back, everyone, to episode 32 of the Minot Business Podcast presented by Bennett Creative Media. I am your host, Easton Bennett, and with us today, we have Sarah Merck. Sarah, how is it going today?
It is going well. How about you?
Good. We are filming this just after Christmas. Did you have a good Christmas?
I did, yes.
There you go. Awesome. So, like always, we're going to get right into things. For people that have never met Sarah, they have no idea who you are, what you do. What would you tell them?
So my name is Sarah Merck. I am a small business owner in the photography industry. My business name is Root and Bloom. I graduated from my high in 2017, as Easton knows.
Yep.
Then after I graduated college, I attended the University of Mary in Bismarck. During that time, got engaged to my high school sweetheart. We got married in that time, but I also discerned out of college after 2 years. And photography was kind of a push behind that, the confidence behind that.
Did you go to school, Mary, for photography?
No, I actually went for elementary ed with a minor in Catholic studies. I always, just love the creative field. I had an interest in photography, never thought it could be some sort of career or just like a side income.
Yep.
But yeah, it was kind of a push behind that. And also just getting married and desire to have kids right away kind of pushed me to just withdraw from college. I'm like, I want to be home with my kids. And so why am I spending all this money to get an education that I'm not going to go into the classroom and teach kids, you know?
Yeah.
And then we actually, after we got married, we got pregnant right away. And then 2020 hit, COVID hit. The
lovely year of COVID.
Right. And
when everything went well for everybody.
Our oldest son was born. And then we actually moved to Idaho for 2 years.
Okay.
My husband's currently in medical school. So we went out there for the first 2 years of his education. And then we actually just moved back to Minot this past spring in April.
Okay. So are you liking it back in Minot then?
Yeah. North Dakota. I'm North Dakota girl through and through. I could not imagine. I had my time living away and I think I'm good. Like I've had that. So
I had no idea that you went to Idaho. So were you doing photography when you went there then or no?
So that is, I feel like a little bit of a unique part of my journey with my business in photography. I started Root and Bloom in 2018.
Okay.
About like a half a year before I withdrew from college officially.
Yep.
And I was still discerning, did I really want this to be a business? Like, what was this going to look like? And kind of just letting, for me, like the Lord just kind of work in his ways and saying, you'll open up doors and I'll keep walking through them and I'll keep,
Yep.
And so basically, with that and then getting married and then getting pregnant, COVID hitting, moving away, shifted a lot for my business.
Okay.
And it just, I felt like it was just really a unique situation where I'm like, we live in Idaho, but I don't want to have a clientele in Idaho. This is not where I want to be. I want to be home with my kids. I want to tuck them in at, at night for bed. And I don't want to be traveling back if I do build a clientele here. So that was really kind of, especially and it was honestly a blessing in disguise, stepping back right away in my business.
Yep.
And really discovering, I was still shooting during that time when we come back in North Dakota for the summer or holidays.
So you're still shooting here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I still shot weddings and shot, couple sessions, families, all those things in that meantime before we left and when we would come back to visit. But it was really a time to navigating who I am and within my brand and what does my brand stand for and just the whole brand identity and really navigating that. Also the client experience part of that.
Which is a big thing.
Right. Absolutely. Especially being in a creative field and working in a person-to-person industry. Yeah. You're working with real people at the end of the day. And so that was truly a blessing in disguise that I really got that time, especially being a new mom, to do that on top of I don't have to be in the field per se, up front constantly. Yep. I really had that time at home to, navigate and learn from those sessions I did get and those clients I was working with from afar and when I'd come back. So,
well, that's the nice part about a creative industry is a lot of it you can do from home. You just sit at a computer, you can edit the photos of a wedding at home. So I want to go back to the beginning a little bit. How did you decide on the name Root and Bloom?
Yeah. So before, my main name is Pittner. So when I first kind of started unofficially, not registered with the state, I just did Sarah Pittner Photography.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I thought it was something like that and then it transitioned. Okay,
and
gotcha.
So that's what I did just to have a name association unofficially because I knew when I used that name, I wanted to change it because I'm engaged, I'm getting married. I've seen other photographers who do use their maiden name, and then it's really confusing of like, I'm actually not Sarah Pittner anymore. I'm Sarah Merck. And it's just like this weird thing. And so especially being a visual person, I'm a list maker. So I write down everything, words that really stood out to me, especially just being a person of faith. That was a huge thing for me. Like, I want that to tie in.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a really deep love for florals. Like, I've always had as a kid. I've really that was the number one thing. One of the number one things that we spent in our budget for our wedding was florals and greenery. And it really just came down to mainly just faith-based, and I'm rooted in the Lord.
Yep.
And my business is not for myself. I think it's so easy, especially with owning your own small business, that it's easy to kind of get back into the about me about it, and it can become selfish. And I think there's certain things that definitely should be. You have to prioritize yourselves, to a certain capacity. Of course, that's super important. But for me, that it was ultimately for the Lord, and He was the one in control of how this would go, especially navigating life as a wife and a mom and all these things that He'll lead me in. If this blooms into something great, it does, and if it doesn't, let it be His will. And so far, He hasn't taken it away. So,
yeah, no, that's awesome. And I like names that have business names where it's associated to something.
Right.
And that's something I did in the beginning. I just went name Bennett Creative Media. And it's it works. I could stamp it on whatever, but
and
I
for
wish
you, if you get married too, it's that's your name forever anyway. So it's it true. Works,
Unless I'm just going to take a hyphenated name with whoever I marry.
Right.
But yeah, maybe there's a rebrand down the road. Who knows? But so when did you kind of get interested in photography then? Was it in high school? Was it in college? When did that kind of stem from you or stem for you?
Right. So I always had a love for photography, mainly just the fruit of it, of well taken photographs, artsy,
Yep.
Photographs taken. I'm wow, this is a really beautiful flat lay. I mean, looking probably back at what I saw then, it probably wouldn't be the same style of what I had, but looking back and wow, this is a really beautiful flat lay picture of someone getting coffee, or they're traveling and this just seems really beautiful, or all those things. And I was interested in a kid. I would always play with the flash cameras, the super cheap ones my parents had around.
The disposable ones?
Disposable cameras.
Yeah, gotcha.
And my dad also had an old film Canon camera growing up. And he also had a Canon recorder.
Camcorder, okay.
And so I would always play around with that when I was a kid. There was actually never any film in it because I don't think my dad would let me do that. Yeah. But it was something that I was always just interested in, but I never thought of it more than that. I'm a kid just imagining.
Yeah.
I was terrible in art in school.
Really?
I'm not a kid who can draw well, paint well, ceramics. No, I always wanted to be, but I just never devoted the time.
That's
so
interesting.
And that's why it was just really odd to me. Then photography, a creative field. I wouldn't say that I'm more a creative person in the way that you would think about it.
Yeah.
But the visual part of it, putting things together, I grew up in a home where, coming from 10 kids, we all had very different gifts. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home with my parents owning business, some of my siblings owned businesses, and we all had different gifts, especially having lots of weddings in our family.
Yeah.
We would decorate our own wedding. So I feel I got the fruit of that, and I got to witness my sisters and my mom do it. And then it kind of just bloomed. I was really interested in late middle school, early high school. Got my first DSLR camera when I was in 8th grade.
Okay. Because that's kind of what I was wondering, if it stemmed from, if there is an entrepreneurial background in your family.
Right.
So,
but I never thought of it as a business. That's a funny thing. It was just this is something fun I'm going to do. I never thought I can make money from this.
So were you always business minded then? Or did it kind of just be I guess I can turn this into a business?
I think it was, I guess I can turn this into a business. I knew there was always a market for it because people, living in North Dakota, senior pictures, weddings, people are always going to be married, getting married.
Always,
that industry, people are always going to be graduating high school or college. It's never going to die, right? But I think it just stemmed from, I'm really passionate about this and I love doing it and I can be creative, and especially future, I want to be a wife and a mom, and I want to specifically be a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
This is something that I can adapt to my family life.
Gotcha.
And I can still do on top of that,
Which is cool that you figured that out early on, a window that you can take
right
to make these things happen.
Right.
You're running the company solo, I assume, correct?
Yep.
So how is that being kind of a jack of all trades? You have the creative side where you're taking the photos, the editing, and then you have the business side where, you're sending invoices, all of that.
Right.
What is it like being a jack of all trades?
It's definitely a lot I feel like first time business owner still doing that. And I think it depends on the level you're at, whether are you at the place to outsource or do you want to outsource? So there's, still tasks that you enjoy doing or not enjoy doing.
Yep.
And it's a juggling act, especially any business owner that's also a parent knows that.
Yep. Work-life balance, right?
Yeah, work-life balance looks different. And I think, especially within this last year, took a lot of like discipline of nap times, emails. I have a really great supportive husband that if I say like, give me like an hour and a half, like, can you play with the kids if he's home from clinicals? And I'm like, I just need to answer emails. I need to respond to this, or I need to edit a little bit. He like will do it, which is awesome. But it's a lot of just communication with the people you're involved in, such as my spouse or like my kids, and, working with the times that you have. And I think, especially when you think of like success, I think automatically we think numbers, revenue, right?
Oh, you got to be $1 million.
Right.
Yeah.
All these things where it's success is like not measured by revenue, right? And if you know truly what it is. And with kids, you may not be growing. It's easy in the business world to compare yourself to other people. Like, wow, they're booking like this many things, like 30 weddings a year. Oh my gosh, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
But then you sit back and you look at it, like, they may have different priorities than I do.
And you're like, oh, they're booking 30 weddings a year. That's a lot of, that's a lot of weddings.
I don't want to be editing those. Like, it's one of those things where that success looks for everyone. And when you do have other priorities, like a family, you're still growing, but it just may be at a slower pace. And that's okay. It's okay to grow at a slower pace.
And I think there's a book I read called Company of One, and it talks about success looks different for other people where, someone might want to build $1 million company, but maybe this person just wants to build a $60,000 company, work for themselves, and just kind of do their own thing. So I think if people realize in the beginning, this mic is cutting out on me. I think if people realize in the beginning, figure out what success looks like for you and then just go for that instead of shooting for these societal norms of, I need to build the next Google. It's like, okay, well, you better find some smart friends then.
Knowing that if you do have that dream of something being big, but it shifts and changes over time, that's okay. Give yourself the permission and the freedom to change your mind and to adapt where you're at and your desires. Like those things change over time, and that's okay. I feel like we are so hard on ourselves because like this is what I wanted, or this is where honestly and truthfully, I'm not going to be the breadwinner in my family. Like that's my husband's role and that's his job. He's going to be a physician. Like this is just, passive income. And also for me to do something on the side, especially when our kids get older and are in school and I can do something out of the house or, whatever it may look like in the future. Yeah.
So that's a great piece of advice. Find what success looks like for you and then attack it that way. So as far as, funding for starting your company, did you start it pretty lean? Where did you get your equipment from? I know camera gear sometimes can get a little bit expensive, but what did that look like in the beginning for you?
So my first camera I had was a Canon 60D.
Okay.
Don't really know why I picked that. I got it like freshman or sophomore year of high school.
Yep.
Don't really know why. So that's what I was shooting on in the first like year, unofficially my business, because I hadn't registered with the state, but I was still discerning like, is this what I want to do? I was like charging like maybe $50 for like a couple session.
Yeah. You're like,
we've grown a lot, but
just slide me some cash.
Honestly,
we'll call it good.
If looking back in those photos now, I'm like, I probably should never charge them anything, honestly. But
it's so funny in the creative field. I remember shooting a video for my uncle. And I can't even remember. I wanted like $100 or $200 or something. I was like, oh, I deserve this. And now I watch the video. I'm like, I don't know why he ever even gave me the permission to walk inside of his building with that. If that's the product I was giving him.
But yeah, a lot of it was at first like self-funding. And is there a lot of equipment that kind of goes into it? Yes. But I think you can be intentional with what you choose. You can be, I'm not a person where I'm like, I need every other like newer camera on the sun or every lens. Like I kind of have my like tried and true couple lens in my body. And I'm like, that's what I stick with.
Okay.
And
so one camera, that's what you rock on a wedding day.
I usually do that, and I just interchange lenses, especially because the wedding days I usually shoot are a little bit more traditional. So it's like, okay, I only need this one type of lens specifically for like an hour. It's not like I'm constantly shooting. Like I'm.
So you know what
mountains.
you're getting.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And so yeah, it was a lot of self-funded right away. But then after I was slowly making income, that could help with then like funding certain like.
Yeah. Reinvesting back in the business.
Right. Reinvesting back in the business, and also just like softwares that you need, little things like that.
Yep. So do you remember when you started making some money from some weddings and, families or whatever you were doing at the time? Do you remember was there anything that you're like, man, I really want this now that I can go and do this? I have the ability to go get this. Is there a new lens that you wanted? Is there, if you're like, oh, now I want to do a new website, whatever it was?
I think the first thing was once I started making money and I didn't have to use my lens, my lens I had in high school, I could go buy my first body and my lens, and I still use that today. It's like my tried and true, like baby that I have, my like Mark IV and my 24-70 like lens. Like that's my tried and true, especially for portraits. I think it's so versatile. Where like that was one of the first big purchases and then I was buying my 70 to 200 millimeter lens for like wedding days and.
It's funny how photographers and videographers, they get that first body. I still have the first one I bought, and it's like, oh, I just never want to get rid of you. I could sell you, just get some money, get something new, but it's like, I kind of want to just hold on to it for a little bit.
It will go in a museum one day.
Exactly. Under like a glass box, bulletproof. It's like, you can get that for like a couple $100 Easton. So do you remember your first wedding you ever did?
Yeah.
How was it?
It was good. It was for a high school couple.
Okay.
That we graduated with. And
so you knew them already?
Yep. Knew them already. I think that helped a lot. And I felt like when it came to a wedding day, I listened to other photographers talk like they're intimidated or they didn't really know how it would go or whatever. I feel like I kind of had an upper hand because I had so many siblings get married, and I witnessed like a whole wedding day, how things panned out.
I kind of know exactly what's going to happen.
Right. And it's like, I knew kind of what to expect for the most part.
Okay.
I felt like.
Yeah.
And I felt like that kind of just gave me a good advantage and confidence to go in.
Okay.
I second shot with a local photographer to North Dakota.
Okay.
And she just took me underneath her wing, and I second shot a few weddings before I shot my first wedding, July of 2019. Technically I shot like a morning of a wedding day in the fall of 2018.
Okay.
Terrible. Like Still learning. I was like shooting. I like shot that whole morning in JPEG. Wow.
Yeah, you did. Hey, you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
and then you figure it out, and it's like, okay, I probably can't do this.
And then so my first full-on wedding was July 2019, and I fell in love with weddings. Like I think weddings, it's a lot of work, but I love getting a front row seat.
Yeah.
I love shooting couples like that.
Mm-hmm.
That is where I like groove. Like that's my jam, and I love it.
It's funny because I'm kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum where I'm like, I shot probably 3 or 4 weddings and lost half the footage to one of them, almost missed a kiss for another one. Another one, like the groom lost his ring at the barn, and the whole wedding, everybody there, like 100 people were outside looking for it in the grass. He never found it. I'm like, I don't know if weddings, maybe I'm not cut out for this. So I haven't filmed one in a while, but maybe I'll get back into the industry.
And I feel like it's one of those things where you just kind of find your niche, however people say it. But it's one of the things where you just find what you love and you roll with it. And I feel like that's where you feel like the most creativity flows from.
Yep.
And you create your best work. I mean, even as a creative, we know that there's some sessions that we do like this is kind of off. This wasn't the angle I wanted, or like the editing's a little bit off, but we're also still humans.
Oh, exactly. Nothing can be perfect, right? Before we get into more questions, we're going to take a quick second to hear from our sponsor this week, Midco. There's no time for downtime in our fast-paced business world, so why settle for anything less than ultra smooth, ultra reliable business technology backed by a team of dedicated industry professionals. Midco Business Services are here to work around the clock with built-in redundancy to provide the ultimate peace of mind while you run your business. Start with a free consultation to explore our adjustable service plans at midco.com/business. I appreciate Midco sponsoring all these episodes. I'm a Midco user myself. Really love the service that they've given me. Haven't had any issues with it. So Midco, thank you again. If you guys want to check that out, midco.com/business. Let's get back into some questions, Sarah. Brand is very powerful. When I think of Root and Bloom, there's a specific style that I think of. And honestly, it's kind of like the colors that you're wearing today. A little cream hat, a nice, I don't even know. Would that be a sweater?
Sweater,
yes.
Yep, you're good.
So that's kind of like, that's what I think of, is that style of photography. How do you go about, creating that brand? Was there a time when you're like, this is the style I want to shoot, or what did that look like?
Right. And if we're talking like editing wise, I think it was just really finding photographers that I gravitated towards in the industry, what I liked about their work, maybe what I didn't love about their work, and kind of finding where I fell, but also combating the comparison game.
Okay.
I am uniquely like offering a product and a service to a client or to an individual or whatever it may be that's going to be completely different because, right, I'm me. And so I feel like I've always just really gravitated towards, in terms of like stylistically with editing or just like how I pose, I want to feel natural. Like my couples, they're going on a date and I'm tagging along. I might give them a few prompts. Like I want them to enjoy their experience. And I feel like it's typically maybe more the male side than the female side of like, I'm not very comfortable in front of the camera. I'm a little bit stiff, but it's like,
girls usually know what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. It's a little bit more in their nature to like want to be feminine and be, beautiful and dress up and all those things. Right. And so just remind them like focus. And that's why I think I love couples so much, because they don't have to focus on me. Right. Like they focus on each other. And so I really love just like the natural feel of it. I am personally just like not a stiff poser because no one like, you don't feel comfortable that way. You're like, oh, I'm just like smiling at the camera. Like I feel like it's kind of like, the typical like studio, like JCPenney, like Christmas photos, which have their time and place, of course, but it's one of those things where I love the way they look. And especially just, I gravitate towards more earth tones. And I think that really just came from my love of like North Dakota. Like moving to Idaho, I have gained just a new love for my home state.
Okay. God, I need to get back there.
Right. And especially just a small town feel of community, but also I grew up, my dad's a farmer and my parents grew up from farming families. And that being like super close to my background, you just look at like the color palettes of North Dakota. Like you have beautiful fields of rolling hills of like wheat or like soybeans or like whatever it may be. And like the green luscious grass we have in like our amazing summers and like the lake and all those things where I feel like that's what it just sprung from, was I was really inspired around like,
we got to get you on North Dakota Legendary for a quick ad read for him. But no, I've always loved those colors too. I remember seeing a picture. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was, you took it and it was like in front of a car, like the hood of a car, and it was like shooting up. I don't know. It's like one of my favorite pictures you've ever posted. And I was like, man, that looks like, I obviously don't take photos, so I can't make my photos look like that. But I was like, that's a badass photo right there. So that's kind of when I first started it, kind of looking at your brand more, and I was like, oh, a lot of them are kind of similar. So that's really cool. How did you find your creative style? Was it difficult? Did you always have this, or did you have to tinker with things?
I think I definitely had to tinker with things. I think you just sometimes, especially within the photography industry or even just like videography, you got to get out there. You got to practice, like just like shoot as much as you can. That's how you're going to like quote unquote, like master your craft. Right.
Yeah.
And just learning from others in the industry that I gravitated towards, or like other people like, oh, how'd they shoot? Or I really loved, this angle or this pose I got. And how could I, gain inspiration from that of, making, they look like they're couples or they're, their subject is so at ease. And I think that was a huge thing of, I had to tinker with it for a little bit and kind of figure out, but I felt like, and I think my early on clients would probably say the same thing of, I was definitely like, I'm a prompt girl, like give them prompts, let them like whatever naturally flows from that. And I think that also, once I kind of nailed one aspect, that helped with editing. And I feel like even as a photographer and editing, I feel like you're always kind of tweaking your editing a little bit of like, oh, this could be a little bit different,
and you start to like different things.
Right.
Okay. Now I like these colors more, or a little more contrast.
Right. And it depends, what you're shooting or the color palette that's naturally in the photograph too, that might tweak it, a little bit too as well.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And that's why I stay away from photos, because every photo I edit, I look at it and I'm like, I hate that. Let's just go back to videos. Do you have any, maybe a nightmare story or a super fun story, something that you can share? Anything that comes to the top of your mind?
Oh, goodness. Golly.
Like mine would be that time I shot a wedding and the groom literally lost his ring, just gone.
Oh, that would be. I'm put on the spot here. I'm trying to think of.
And I can let you think about it. And if you have some at the end, we can come back to it too.
I feel like I've been pretty lucky, like with my clients. Like,
Things go fairly well.
yeah, I think, and I mean, I don't know who,
Knock on wood.
yeah, like who knows now, but
Yeah.
I think for them, I mean, there's always this little things, but the beautiful part about just being a photographer is I get a front row seat to a person's wedding day or like these huge milestones where I like always tell my clients, like, if you need like Aunt Sally to like just back off for a little bit, I will be the bad guy for you. Like it's your wedding day. Like let me, and I mean, there's always things to navigate like wedding day where I've had constantly like aunts or moms like badger the bride with things. And I can see like, she's just like, I'm just
stressed out.
I'm like overwhelmed. I'm like, I'll tell them that we're just like taking photographs. And just like, if there's portrait shots happening, I'll tell them back off a little bit, where I think it's kind of neat to play like that mediator communicator role, because they don't know me. So they can't like, they won't like yell at me or anything. And I'm not that I'm ever rude, but it's really neat to kind of play those different aspects that kind of come into that communication part of it. But yeah, I feel like I've been pretty dang lucky
there you go.
Far. So.
That's where you're like, you guys can't get mad at me.
Right.
So it's in the contract. You signed it. Can't get mad.
I'm legally protected.
Yeah, I can do whatever I want. Do you try to get to know your clients on a personal level then?
For the most part, yes. Typically, the majority of my clients, I either know them personally or that's like the small business world is like word of mouth, right? But I know them in some capacity. My husband knew them because he went to school or camp or something with them, or I went to high school with them, or there's people, I feel like a lot of my clients are from the University of Mary too, for weddings and stuff. And so I know them through someone else, and we automatically jive, or we, if they want to hop on a phone call, we hop on a phone call or whatever things, or, kind of build that relationship a little bit beforehand, especially your wedding day. Like you could hang out with me all day long. So I'm like, I hope we know each other well.
Yeah.
And so.
No, that makes sense. And that's what they say is relationships, that's kind of like, absolutely. What is it? Your network is your net worth. I think I've said that like 15 times on this podcast, but it's true. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what are some best tips that you would have, for wedding photography? Kind of what's your thought process going out throughout the day? Maybe someone's just trying to get into the wedding industry.
Right. Are you talking about just day of, or like the process in which of getting into the wedding industry? Like starting. If
you got some of both, then throw them both out there.
Okay.
Just some things you've learned.
Right.
Maybe.
So if you're wanting to kind of get and dabble into the wedding industry, I would definitely find a mentor. Okay. Like someone who has been in the wedding industry, who has shot weddings, and like reach out to them. I think like that's especially like living in a state like North Dakota is like everybody kind of knows everybody. Like we're a friendly North state. Dakota, nice. Like it's a community, and we know that growing from a small town, which is honestly like such a gift. And if they're willing and they're open, like ask them questions, or if they offer mentorships or whatever it may look like. Can I come along on a wedding day and like just shoot for you for free, or whatever it is, or just like kind of be your assistant for the day and help out, and get like I'm definitely like hands-on learner. Yeah. And so like getting a firsthand experience of being there, ask the questions, because there's a lot with starting your business that, especially like myself, I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing.
Well, and I think it's underrated I've shot multiple free projects just because I wanted to learn.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing is I think we're so afraid of like, you need to charge something, or you need this. I even still to this day, and especially it's mainly just for myself to create. Yeah. I'll like do a model call and I'll be like,
who wants photos?
Yeah. Who wants photos? Like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. I can have complete control of what I'm like creating and where I'm going, all these things that I have, like that creative freedom. Yep. And that really just like what fuels my passion in that. And I think even, if you've been in the wedding industry right away, like there's no shame in offering free sessions, because you're getting more practice and you're getting more content, that you can use for advertisement or your portfolio to show other people. So I think, definitely find a mentor that you look to, you enjoy their work, you admire their work.
Did you have a mentor then?
Yeah. So I had a Carly Scheffner, now is her name.
Okay.
It's KS Photography.
Okay.
She's based in, Bismarck, but in the last few years they moved to Fargo. So she got married, and Carly just like took me underneath her wing. Like she was awesome, just a great person. Like she creates beautiful work. And she just like answered, like I like messaged her on Instagram and I said, hey, like I'm just kind of getting into like the photography industry. Like I want to do lifestyle photography. Would you want to meet for coffee? Like I totally understand. Everyone's different. People have different priorities or like, the kind of time is money and it's hard, like the learning to be generous, but also like, am I sacrificing other things? That's a whole different conversation.
Do I want to meet for coffee? Yes.
Right. And she was just awesome. I second shot for a couple weddings. She let me like kind of go behind the scenes for her for a couple of like general sessions.
Okay.
And she was awesome. I learned a lot from her. And I think also like a great tool is like social media. Like there's so many business educators out there, especially within the creative field and even more specifically within photography, that I would just watch like I'm an observer. So like I watch like, oh, they're doing this.
Maybe
like,
I should do this.
Or they're doing this, or like this, seems to be successful and they're doing it consistently, whether it's like social media marketing or it's, looks a little bit different in there. And I would just listen, like I would just be attentive to the ways and I would just gather like all information. I would like write it down or, whatever it may be. And I think that helped me a lot of just, being attentive.
It's so much better now starting a business compared to
absolutely
25 years ago.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I learned everything from YouTube. Yeah. It's like, how do you do this? Quick Google search.
They're the OGs. Like they put in like the nitty gritty.
Yeah. And well, everyone did the work for me and now I can just watch the videos. I'm like, thanks.
You didn't see the fruit of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But you work to get to that point. Though,
Correct. So you just be resourceful with what's out there. There's so much out there. Are there any strategies you've implemented to make your business run more effectively? Any softwares, any, processes?
So client management.
Yeah.
Honeybook is my go-to.
Okay.
Like my tried and true. That program organizes everything, my contracts, like my pre-done emails that I just need to tweak a name or a couple sentences.
Yep.
Literally everything. Emails, it's all in one place, just organized.
Yeah.
I love Honeybook, my tried and true.
That's what I've heard, that it's pretty popular around the wedding industry.
Yeah, it's so nice. Like even if you're not like a photographer, but you're like a project-based business, it like works very, very well.
Oh, so it's not specifically weddings then?
No, you literally can use it for any like project, like service-based industry because it like divides like that. Super awesome.
Yeah.
So I hired a graphic designer to do my whole rebrand last summer, like my website and my actual like logo brand and all those things. But for anything like on top of that, like Instagram stories or graphics or whatever, Canva, I used to be so intimidated by graphic design because I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like,
where do I put things? Fonts?
I like never use Photoshop. Like I just like try to be intentional. Like I don't want to have to edit out people if I don't have to. So I don't want to use Photoshop.
Let's just get them out there in the photos.
Right. So then, or like Illustrator or Adobe had a program. I think it was Adobe Spark. It's not Adobe Spark anymore. It's something else, I think. But I would kind of use that, but it was like it felt very like contractor-y, like not very creative. Or I also didn't have like a lot of knowledge in that area. But like Canva is like my tried and true for that too. Like I love messing around with Canva, even for like personal things like invitations or like
people underestimate
like
it too.
Right. Yeah. Like, you have so much capacity with Canva and it's like it's not that hard. It's kind of,
it's very user friendly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I see the things all the time. It's like, oh, you're not a graphic designer. You use Canva. But I'm like, dude, I use Canva. It's awesome.
Right.
And if you're a graphic designer, you're on Illustrator and Photoshop.
Right. And even I think they use Illustrator as well, but even my graphic designer that I hired out, they use Canva for some things too because they know it's more user friendly for their clientele, which also is super helpful.
Yeah. So I mean, whatever gets the job done, that's really what it comes down to. Are there any marketing strategies that kind of haven't really worked for you? Did you ever try anything and you're like, I'm not going to really do that anymore? Maybe certain platforms. I don't know if you're on like Twitter, TikTok, that kind of thing.
I try to minimize my social media because I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
Yep.
Like personally and just like business-wise, where most of my clients are either by like people I know through the word of mouth or Instagram. It's really word. Like I have a Facebook page. I like kind of do it, but not a lot of the people that are gravitating towards my work or want to hire me are on Facebook.
Okay.
And so I have it especially when I first started out, which is kind of nice to give update for people who maybe aren't on the Instagram platform. But I feel like that's where I gravitate towards. And it's worked really well for me. I know some people are like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. But also, I think we also have an advantage growing up in North Dakota where it's like, if I were to fall off the face of the earth of like social media, you do have the word of mouth of meeting people and, like, collaborating with others.
They would still know that you're alive and well.
Right. And so I think that's kind of like my biggest thing. And you can hear, I mean, you listen to like other business creative entrepreneurs in like the educational field and they're like, do this and post this much or like do reels and all those things where I'm like,
oh, that's a lot.
That is a lot. I'm like, I could maybe create the time and carve out like in my schedule to do this. I've kind of done it to a certain point. And have I seen growth in numbers? Absolutely. But I'm like, maybe not like locally. Like that.
Yeah.
There's
is it worth it? Yeah.
Right. There's give and take with where you're at. And there's many photographers I know that like barely post on Instagram. And I know they're very successful in their business with where they want to be. And I think you just have to discern like what works best for you. And if it's causing you stress and anxiety, not worth it.
Well, and that's where the amount of platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have 2 or 3 pages and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, this is getting a lot.
Where like people sometimes outsource from like, I like that. Like that's a place where I can actually talk with people, like, meet them. I mean, virtually in a sense that hopefully would grow into something, face to face or
I've had a lot of people say, oh, let me do your this, that, or the other thing. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I like it sucks. It takes a lot of time, but I like doing it.
Right.
So.
And I think it's those things where you have to discern in your business. What do you enjoy to do? And like keep doing it. And if it's worth you to outsource and do it. And if not, like, I think it's a discernment. And
podcast clips are the new thing. I've had at least 10 people in the last 2 weeks reach out and say, hey, I'll make podcast clips with the captions and emojis. I'm like, I do it myself. It takes 2.5 minutes per clip. Right, I'm fine. And they're like, I'm charging like $50 a clip. I'm like good Lord.
Maybe I should offer this.
Yeah. I'm like, maybe,
How
I was
can
like,
I spin this?
Yeah, I'm going to start my own clip agency actually. Thank you. But no, that's awesome. Let's go into only a couple more questions here for you. What is your favorite part about the creative process?
Wow. I think it's the people. Like I get to storytell with their love story, their family, especially like returning clients or just like, even if I know them personally and I've seen how their family has grown and I get to capture, like, especially now being in a point in my life where all the milestones my clients I've hit. Like I've graduated from high school and I've got engaged and I've got married and I have kids and all these things where I've got to, and I know how precious those photographs are. And it's truly an investment. And then for me, it's like taking a person's photograph or like, doing a session with them is much more than a transaction at the end of the day. Like I get to capture a still moment in time of where they're at, like whatever season they're at, in their life. And I think that's something that's truly special and intimate. And I mean, honestly, like an honor to be able to do, to be able to, just to capture it and to be creative and like tell their story in a sense in a unique way in which I can only do and another photographer can only do, or, you can go down the line of it.
Do you think that your photography and your product is better for weddings having gone through a wedding yourself, getting married?
I think so. Yes. I think it's helped my perspective of like, in every couple, especially, it's more so the bride that maybe wants a specific photograph more than the groom does. Yeah. Which is
like whatever the lady wants.
Right. And I think it's a give and take where like maybe they have one of like, I want one with my grandma or whatever, but it's usually like nothing super like on a bigger scale of importance. But I think it's one of those things where, and again, everyone's so different, but what's a priority? You're like, I kind of like in my own like wedding gallery, like, I got these and like, these were nice, but like, I didn't gravitate towards these ones. These are still beautiful photographs. But I loved these ones more and and I feel like that's even part of like after my client spoke with me, like I give them questionnaires of really honing down what is most important.
Okay. What are you really going to want?
Right. And let's talk, if there's like non-negotiable photographs that you want me to photograph, tell me so I know, and we have clear communication and we know both like parties are taken care of. Like I want you to leave happy at the end of the day. And
instead of day of like, oh, you didn't get this photo. It's like, I didn't know that was the
like
thing.
This wasn't communicate where I try to like cross all my T's, dot all my I's, so they're taken care of. Because the last thing that they have to worry about that day is me. Like, you need to just show up and relax and like enjoy your day. Like, don't worry about what I need to do, or I'm a professional in this field, so let me just take care of you. And I think. And that's the beautiful thing about walking with your clients through the process and that's guide, because they've never got married before. And so they're learning too, That's
the thing about the day. They want to be able to relax and let all of the vendors, whether it be the event or the venue, the photographer, videographer, whatever it might be, kind of just do their thing. What would be your top 4 pieces of advice, your Mount Rushmore of business advice to someone that's starting a business tomorrow, next week, or maybe they just started one?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So this is a good question. One of my things that, especially if you are, even if you're single right now, but you want to get married, you want to have kids one day, especially coming from like a female perspective and, mom and a wife, is the notion that like you can do both.
Okay.
But here's the catch. You can do both. You can own a business, whatever that may look like, and be a wife and a mom. But something is going to have to give. Yeah. There's going to be sacrifices. And this may be a little unpopular, but I hope it's your business that suffers over your family. Yeah. I hope that's what it is. And just give yourself grace would be another thing. Is like, it's going to take time. I think it's so easy to look at other business owners because we only see like the fruit of the thing, versus like the behind the scenes and how many hours and tweaking and the money spent. And
you don't see the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Where it's easy just to play the comparison game, especially within the creative field, because, you feel like maybe you're behind or whatever it may be. Give yourself grace. You're going to grow at your own pace, and that's not right or wrong. It's not like a fast or slow. Like it's all, it's all subjective, right?
Well, yeah, and that's where people compare themselves like, oh, this person just got here in 2 years. It's like, okay, well, it might take you 5, but there's nothing wrong with that.
And the life situation. Well, this person's single and they got there in 2 years. Well, this person, it just got married and has a kid. It's like,
it's like they don't have as much time.
Right. And I think it even comes with the like, oh, what do I charge or whatever this? It's like, well, are you single and living by yourself and you live in like a very like non-expensive state? Or do you have like kids and a spouse and you're paying off college
expenses
loans?
Are low and you can just
live
with 4 roommates?
So there's so many intricate details that kind of go into that.
Okay. So there's 2. You gave me 2. I need 2 more from you.
Goodness gracious.
And they don't have to be anything crazy. Maybe you're just like, tell your bride to, don't forget her flowers or something. I don't know. I saw a TikTok as like 5 tips she gave. I wish I knew what it was, but
right. I think another thing would be, especially, just like the photography industry is like, be there for your clients, like walk them through, like be a companion, especially like throughout the wedding day of just like affirming them. And I think sometimes we kind of like, some people can kind of get into business mode. I'm like, I want to be a fly in the wall, but like, I'm there to like hype up my couple. I'm there to like really just like be madly in love in that moment and just like let loose in the best of ways, but like have fun. Like this is supposed to be an enjoyable time. Like you don't have to be intimidated by this, but like just reassure people, just be an advocate for them. And I think that will speak volumes to your clients too, just showing up and like, being like a friend and like a companion throughout the day.
Okay.
Or even the session to make them feel most comfortable.
There's 3. I need 1 more.
This is tough. Oh my gosh.
I always throw everybody on the spot with this one. I'm like, you got to give me 4.
That's what I'm requesting. I know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Gosh. Okay. The only one I can think of that's just kind of, I feel it's kind of lame, but,
no bad answers.
Within the wedding industry, something like I love to do with my couples, like leading up to the wedding day, is I send them like a PDF guide of just like things to like remember, like if I take detail shots, pack these. Also, it works great if you like, obviously you're going to need your ring for the wedding day. You're going to need like your jewelry or your shoes or your watch or whatever it may be. Like pack that in the box. I can photograph it super easily. Yeah. Different things just like to remind them to like bring like a great attitude. Like you're freaking getting married. Like get hyped. Like this is an amazing day. Just like little things like that to kind of make them feel at ease and they're taken care of. And just just listen to their needs. Like, I think is a huge thing is just
figure out what they want.
Right.
And then go
this
with
was like those little like acts of service for your clients. Cause I feel like they just feel taken care of versus like, I mean, I hear some people, they talk about they got married that day and, like we barely talked to our photographer.
Yeah.
Like we booked them and then we talked to them maybe like a month before. And that was like it. Like have the
and then they showed up.
Right. Like have the communication so you don't have to, you can feel at ease and they can feel like they, have, you're with your couple more than the bridal party is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a huge thing is like, just build a relationship. Like you can be in your business. It doesn't have to be like the stoled cone, like emails, like very professional.
Yeah.
Like
build a relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
You can integrate yourself into your business and still be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Gotcha. Boom. There's a good 4. Where can people find you?
So my
Instagram, you said?
Yep. Instagram is mainly where I'm at. You can find me. My handle is at Root and Bloom Photographs. And then my website is rootandbloomphotographs.com.
Perfect. I will link those in the description below. Sarah, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
That was episode 32 of the Minot Business Podcast. Hopefully you guys had a good Christmas, a good New Year. We will see you guys next week for episode 33.